warm welcome. You're watching Gravitas with me, Raisha Sehgal. On the show tonight, we will tell you what is happening in West Asia, with Israel launching airstrikes on Gaza, killing at least 400 Palestinians. Meanwhile, there's growing criticism against Bibi in Israel after he fired the Shin Bet chief. We ask, is there more than what meets the eye? Also, as the US steps up attacks on Iran-backed group, Yemen's Houthis claimed a third attack in 48 hours on US ships. Meanwhile, Trump has raised the stakes, warning Iran of dire consequences. Tonight we ask, will America go to war with Iran? Also on Gravitas, we will get you a story from South Sudan, a nation battling multiple crises, and if technology can help rape survivors in South Sudan. All that and a lot more lined up for you on Gravitas. Let's get you started. We start tonight's broadcast with some breaking news. US President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin are currently holding a phone call. The call is likely to focus upon ending the 3-year-long war in Ukraine. Well, as of now, we are waiting for information on what the two leaders spoke. But ahead of this very crucial, this very important phone call, there is an interesting statement from the Russian President Vladimir Putin. He said, Western dominance is slipping away. The Russian president says the G7, which includes the US and the UK, is too small to see on a map. Putin then quotes hard facts. He says the GDP growth in the G7 countries for 2024 was just 1.9%, while the BRICS countries saw a growth rate of 4.9%. Well, that's what Putin said ahead of the call, but let's now talk about the phone call which is currently underway between Trump and Putin. We have confirmation from the White House that the phone call began at 1400 GMT and so far it has continued almost for an hour. White House says that the talks are going well. Information is slowly trickling in at this point of time. Remember, the last time the two leaders spoke for 90 minutes. Before the call, it was reported that Putin will demand a halt on all weapons supply to Ukraine during a 30-day ceasefire proposed by Trump. During the weekend, Trump said that Moscow and Washington are talking about dividing up certain assets such as territory and power plants. The statement raised concerns in Kyiv and European capitals that Trump could cede too much ground to the Kremlin. Ukraine has agreed to the truce plan, but it all now depends on what the Russian President Vladimir Putin wants. Both Kyiv and its European capitals are saying that Putin is stalling the truce. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer says he had spoken to Trump ahead of his call with Putin. Starmer says that he urged Trump to keep Ukraine in a strong position during the conversation with his Russian counterpart. But is Ukraine in a strong position? These are the maps of Russian control in Ukraine. Moscow has occupied swathes of southern and eastern Ukraine. US has made it clear that Ukraine would likely have to cede land in any deal with Russia. Trump has hinted that division of land will be one of the key agenda of talks with Putin. Reports suggest that the Trump administration weighs recognizing Crimea as Russian territory. The Russian president has agreed to the ceasefire, but he has raised questions on how it will be implemented. But to agree to truce, Russia will seek freezing the Ukrainian battlefield with 20% of the territory that Russia holds in eastern Ukraine to remain a permanent Russian buffer zone. Putin will also seek a formal treaty with the West that bars Ukraine from NATO membership. A permanent truce, not a 30-day ceasefire that helps Ukraine regroup and rearm. Russia will seek an end to the supply of Western weaponry to Ukraine and also a fair division of land and assets. And for more on this, our correspondent Susan Tehrani is now joining us on the show. Hi, Susan. Trump and Putin are currently holding a phone call as we speak. While information on that is still awaited, Putin ahead of the call said that the Western dominance is slipping away. At this point of time, Susan, like I mentioned, that the information is scant. Do you think that the call will be able to achieve Trump's campaign trail promise of ending the war? And what kind of pressure will Trump put on Putin to end the war?
Right. Well, Donald Trump right now at this point really is putting an option in front of Vladimir Putin, either sanctions or escalation. And both of those doesn't seem to be favorable to Vladimir Putin, despite the fact that he does seem to come from a position of power in these negotiations. Remember, just a few days ago, they pushed back Ukrainian forces from Kursk, and it's said that Putin is going to want Kursk back, definitely, and not give in to Ukrainian demands in, that kind of border settlement. That's one aspect of it. The other aspect, as you mentioned, whether or not Donald Trump has the cards or not. His cornerstone financial backplay, so to say, has been tariffs. But tariffs is not going to work on Russia, considering the fact that imports from Russia to the United States are already at an all-time low. He could tighten sanctions, but considering the fact that most of the countries in the global south, and to an extent Europe, which doesn't get reported much, is still trading with Russia, those sanctions have to be very tight. Biden administration sanctions, while they have been crippling for Moscow, they haven't really stopped Moscow's quote-unquote war machine, as the West likes to call it. So it'll be interesting to see if there is a will from Vladimir Putin and whether or not there is an incentive in any way for him to stop this war. He said that he's optimistic, but there are media outlets here who are saying that ultimately it will be Ukraine which will have to give in the most if some kind of negotiated settlement is reached. Another issue is this 30-day ceasefire. Vladimir Putin is skeptical because he thinks that these 30 days are going to be used to rearm Ukraine. On the other hand, the Ukrainians and the West are concerned that these 30 days are going to be used for Russia to once again regroup, regain, get help from its allies, and, a sense of escalation will dominate. So the logical thing would be for both sides to come to the negotiating table and find a settlement. But you can see how there is so much mistrust from both sides, and whether or not Donald Trump can play as an honest broker is yet to be seen. But it appears he's the only person in the West that's willing to bring these two to the table and at least talk about a ceasefire. For the past 4 years, and of course even now from the European sides, it's just fight until the very end.
Right, Susan, we'll wait and have to see the outcome of this high-stakes phone call between the US President Donald Trump and his Russian counterpart. But thanks very much for joining us on the show and sharing your insights.
إفلاس سياسي عند نتنياهو.
Netanyahu doesn't see anyone in front of him.
لما عرف إن حكومته فاشلة
Netanyahu does not see anyone in front of him. Those are the words of a war-weary Palestinian he has among the hundreds of Gazans whose house was hit in Israeli airstrikes earlier today. Israel has single-handedly shattered the Gaza ceasefire and has unleashed hell on earth by resuming the war in Gaza. Nearly 400 Gazans have been killed in a single day by Israel. And these are the scenes from Gaza today. Burnt tents, ash, debris, and widespread destruction. And despite the death toll, Netanyahu's government plans to continue the attacks. Question is, what is the goal of attacking a people already devastated and already displaced? Israel blames Hamas for not releasing hostages, but isn't Netanyahu's decision to end the ceasefire putting those hostages in greater danger? So what exactly is going on here? Is there more than what meets the eye? Turns out there is. Netanyahu knows his time is up. You see, he's facing massive criticism in Israel for his plan to sack Domestic Security Service chief. I'm talking about Netanyahu's move to dismiss the head of the Shin Bet, Ronen Bar. This move has sparked outrage. Demonstrators are calling it a war against the hostages. Netanyahu insists he no longer trusts Bar, saying that confidence in the head of the security agency in Israel is essential during wartime. But Bar has argued that his only obligation is to the citizens of Israel. It is towards the Israelis. And he believes Netanyahu's demand for personal trust, it conflicts with the nation's interests. Here's why it matters. That's because no Israeli government has ever removed the head of Shin Bet before. The head of Shin Bet is key in counter-terrorism efforts, especially during wartime. And here's the kicker. Netanyahu's decision comes as Shin Bet probes two of Netanyahu's advisors for allegedly receiving payments from Qatar, and that's during the Israel-Hamas war. The investigation, which is being referred to as Qatargate by the Israeli media, looks into claims that these advisors received money to help improve Israel's image. Remember, Qatar plays a crucial role in mediating hostage negotiations and ceasefire talks in the Gaza war. However, Netanyahu's decision in 2018 to allow funds from Qatar to go to Hamas for humanitarian reasons, it has become one of the main points of criticism against him, especially after the October 7th attack. Shin Bet believes some of those funds helped Hamas build its military power. Now, Bar and Netanyahu have both come under criticism for the intelligence failures that allowed the October 7th attack to take place. We know this, but Bar has taken responsibility in public and private for the failures and called for a national commission of inquiry. Whereas Netanyahu has blocked the formation of any such commission to probe against him, arguing it would be politically slanted. The Israeli Prime Minister has refused to take any responsibility. What's more, Bar had indicated that he would resign once all of Israel's hostages were returned from Gaza. Now, Bar has played a key role in hostage negotiations until last month, when Netanyahu froze him out of the talks. Which brings us back to today. There's no other way to explain it. Israel purposely violated the ceasefire agreement with Hamas, maybe because it did not want to fully meet the terms it had committed to 2 months ago. Israel failed to uphold the agreement when it did not complete the promised withdrawal of IDF forces from the Gaza Strip in recent weeks, especially from the Philadelphia route along the Gaza-Egypt border. Hamas refused to turn a blind eye and move forward with the release of hostages under the new mediation proposals, which caused the negotiations to stall. In response, Israel then resumed fighting early today. What comes next? More massive airstrikes, but also the implementation of new and wide-ranging ground maneuver in Gaza by Israel. But what is Israel's goals? Hopes of finally defeating Hamas. But will it be successful? It's hard to say at this point of time. But what is clear is the timing of Israel's offensive in Gaza. Israel's latest airstrike on Gaza comes amid the ongoing investigation into two of Netanyahu's advisors for allegedly receiving funds from Qatar. Naturally, Netanyahu's actions against Bar raises questions about his motives, especially since the Shin Bet's internal probe into the security failures on October 7th includes serious accusations against him for his policy of sending Qatari funds to Hamas. So Israel will justify its operation in Gaza as required to break the deadlock in negotiations and also to fulfill Netanyahu's promise to defeat Hamas. Even though these two goals do not align, the hostages could die before Hamas is defeated if that happens at all. More importantly, this situation is driven by Netanyahu's own goals that the Israeli Prime Minister will not admit it. It seems what he really wants to do is restore trust with the far-right faction in his government, pass the budget and stabilize the coalition. That is what is Bibi's goal. Ultimately, that is about Netanyahu's own survival. At this time, keeping up the pressure in Gaza is important for his survival. He also wants to distract the world from the renewed demonstrations against him in Israel.
No longer a war that is about something that is important. It's all about the survival of this government, the survivor of Benjamin Netanyahu.
Pakistan has witnessed one of the deadliest spells of terror this week. Balochistan has witnessed back-to-back attacks with nearly 6 incidents reported over the country in just the last 3 days. On March 16th, a Pakistani army convoy was targeted in a deadly attack in Naushiki district. At least 11 people, including 9 security personnel, were killed in the suicide bomb attack. This came 5 days after BLA hijacked a train with over 400 passengers in the province, demanding the release of Baloch political prisoners. Security forces responded with the Operation Green Bolan. While most hostages were rescued, the siege ended at the cost of 27 civilian lives. Balochistan has been witnessing a troubling surge in violence marked by attacks, counterinsurgency operations and escalating tensions. And WION's Pakistan Bureau Chief Anas Malik is in Balochistan to decode the complex geopolitics of this restive region. Take a look.
Well, we're in Dasht, and this is the first city that you enter following exiting Quetta. It's about 6 kilometers from the Quetta city, and it expands to miles. And if a camera person can show you as well, the terrain here, it's quite interesting. It's quite interesting for the fact that it's all barren, it's all dusty. There's a single road that leads onwards to your destination, and all what you see 2 miles ahead are rugged mountains to the left and to the right. Barely you would see any signs of life or any signs of habitat in the particular region as you drive towards far deeply entrenched towards the Baloch territory or the Baloch resident populace of the Balochistan region.
Bolan Pass, where the Jafar Express was ambushed, has been an important gateway to the region. It leads to the Baloch frontier, connecting Quetta with Sibi by road and railway.
Well, we're on the highway between Kolpur and Mach, and beyond this, tunnels like these are seen in abundance. Now, one of these tunnels is where the Mashkaf tunnel is, where the Jafar Express came under attack. This is where the train track separates from the road that goes along. The road goes to my right, and beyond this, the train track leaves the main road. So basically, it gets into the terrain. It's a mountainous terrain. If my camera person can show you as well, it's all mountains that you can see, and the lack of development in the region is what makes it more of a fertile ground or a hub for recruitment for these extremist rebel elements, those who have picked arms against the Pakistani state at large. What we also understand is that, having been to the area, the other problem is the lack of development and the lack of population as well. The lack of adequate resources that are not available to the population, to whatever population that is there, which also chips in to the bigger factor.
While Israel is bombing Gaza, American fighter jets are pounding Yemen. Trump has now warned both Iran and the Houthis. The Houthis have now said that they are not backing out. They claim to have launched third attack on American naval assets in the last 48 hours. Iranian sources say that Tehran told Houthis to cool tensions. But Yemen's Houthis say that more than 50 people have died in American airstrikes and that they are now at war with the United States of America. But the question we ask tonight, will America go to war against Iran? Our next report telling you more.
The war is accelerating. U.S. fighter jets are pounding Houthi strongholds for a third straight day. Fighter jets from the USS Harry S. Truman, a Nimitz-class aircraft carrier stationed in the Red Sea, are carrying out precision strikes against multiple locations. Unlike previous administrations, Trump has given U.S. Central Command full authority to launch preemptive strikes against Houthi positions at any moment. The White House insists these attacks are defensive, but their scope is widening fast.
This is also not an endless offensive. This is not about regime change in the Middle East. This is about putting American interests first.
The Houthis claim to have carried out a third strike on U.S. aircraft carrier USS Harry S. Truman. On the other hand, there is anger rising against U.S. Thousands take to the streets of the Yemeni capital Sana'a, chanting anti-U.S. slogans.
A message to Trump and the U.S. Zionist aggression against Yemen. We tell them, know who you're challenging. Don't challenge us, don't strike Yemen. Yemen is a graveyard for invaders. We have these rockets that can reach Israel and the White House.
Neither the Israelis, Americans, nor the British threats will deter us or stop us. We will keep moving forward and will strike the U.S. deep in the sea.
President Trump declared he will hold Iran directly responsible for any future attacks by Yemen's Tehran-backed rebels. Tehran says that Houthis are acting independently. Iranian guards warn that if anyone threatens, it will give appropriate, decisive and conclusive responses. The U.S. is sending a clear message. Houthi aggression will not go unanswered, but Trump's latest warning takes things further. He now directly holds Iran responsible for the rebel group's actions. The threat raises a crucial question. If the strikes fail to deter the Houthis, will Trump risk a direct war with Iran? Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Let's tell you what else is lined up for you on the show tonight. We will tell you about the killing fields of Kursk, where the Russian forces are fighting to drive the last Ukrainian soldiers out. We will also tell you how tensions have been escalating in the Taiwan Strait, with the Taiwan's defense ministry now releasing rare video and pictures of the Chinese military drones and ships. Also on the show, we will tell you how US President Donald Trump has declared Biden's pardons void over auto pen use. Let's shift our focus to the killing fields of Kursk, where the Russian forces are fighting to drive the last Ukrainian soldier from Kursk. Following Kyiv's 7-month incursion into this western Russian region, Russian forces claim to have shot down dozens of Ukrainian drones, while Ukraine reports that its forces are conducting defensive operations. Well, according to the Russian Defense Ministry, its air defense system has shot down a total of 72 Ukrainian drones across many locations, including 36 over Kursk. Meanwhile, the General Staff of the Ukrainian Armed Forces reported that a total of 100 carrying out defensive operations in Kursk as planned, and the information that thousands of Ukrainian troops were surrounded in Kursk was incorrect. As per the latest, the Ukrainians claim to have repelled 4 Russian attacks. Their 47th Mechanized Brigade released a video taken by a drone showing the Ukrainian troops' long-range artillery fire targeting a Russian military base in Kursk. The fighting in Kursk has clearly not ended. However, signals were clear by the first week of March that Ukrainian forces in Kursk were becoming trapped. Russian forces, aided by North Korean troops, seems to have tightened a noose around the Ukrainian flanks. Reports further suggest that Russian forces were within firing range to retreat with less Russian land than they had hoped to trade for peace. Well, both the sides, Russia and Ukraine, they're telling a different story, so it is difficult to assess the truth about Kursk. But what is clear is that a fresh supply of North Korean troops, command of the air, and a crushing superiority in numbers. All these factors helped Russia last week retake the town of Zudza, which was Ukraine's last stronghold in western Russia. This is according to reports citing interviews with Ukrainian soldiers and officials. Russia's heavy use of North Korean troops to nearly retake the Kursk region after 7 months of Ukrainian control, it shows Russia's desire to reclaim the land, and that too at any cost. Russia is doing all it can, even if it means throwing more troops to the battlefront, and prevent Kiev from forcing a territorial exchange as part of future negotiations. It puts Ukraine in an increasingly dire situation. Remember, Russia occupies around 20% of Ukrainian land. By Monday, Ukrainian troops had almost entirely withdrawn from Kursk. Ukraine does not want to admit this publicly, but the parts of Kursk that it still controls, it represents a tiny patch, practically nothing, just some border zones. And we are not the ones saying it. Multiple publications have cited Ukrainian soldiers admitting this. They say that Ukrainian troops now occupy only about 10% of the 500 square miles that they once held, which is about 7 months ago. And there are a number of factors for this. US, first of all, had stopped sharing aid as well as intelligence with Ukraine. But did that hamper Ukraine's ability to keep Kursk? It's hard to say. Now, the nearly complete Russian operation in Kursk comes at a very symbolic moment. And that's just ahead of the 80th anniversary of Russia's Victory Day, marking the Soviet Union's triumph over Nazi Germany. Some reports cite Ukrainian officials saying that they expect a major concentration of Russia's efforts to finish the operation before the big day. Already, Russian Defense Minister Andrei Balosov has reportedly invited North Korean troops to participate in the May 9th parade. As Russian troops approach the Ukrainian border of its Sumy region, what happens next will depend on Russia's action solely. In the heart of Africa, a catastrophic environmental disaster unfolds. Toxic waste from a Chinese-owned copper mine decimates one of Zambia's most important waterways. Our next story tells you how China has killed a river in Zambia. Take a look.
In Zambia, the Kafue River, once teeming with life and sustaining countless communities, now carries a deadly cocktail of acid and heavy metals through the country's agricultural heartland, threatening to become one of the continent's worst ecological calamities in recent memory. On 18th of February 2025, a Chinese-owned copper mine in northern Zambia unleashed an environmental disaster. A tailings dam collapsed, spilling 50 million litres of acidic waste, heavy metals, and toxic sludge into the crucial waterway. The deadly mix surged downstream, contaminating the Kafue River, Zambia's lifeline. The spill has already killed fish, poisoned crops, and spread fear among millions who depend on the river.
This morning until here, we did not catch any fish. Why? The you people Chinese put it to their glasses.
It was so fast, according to the guy's explanation, who saw it. It was so fast, it was getting bigger and bigger by the minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. By 30 minutes, it was a whole collapse.
Farmers stared in despair at their ruined maize and groundnut fields. Entire communities were left wondering how they would survive. The toxic sludge didn't just pollute the water, it also shattered lives.
When I went to the fish pond, I found that the lime had flowed through the pond and all the fish had been swept away. I just stood in agony, wondering what I would do about the money I spent on the project. I stood there watching because there was nothing I could do.
It is an environmental disaster, really of catastrophic consequence when we consider the fact that cyanometals has polluted a river on which millions of people depend for their livelihoods. We're also talking about wildlife and just the general disturbance which has been given even in not just villages but actual towns.
This is not the first time Chinese-owned mines have been accused of environmental destruction in Africa. Across the continent, communities suffer while foreign companies extract wealth, leaving behind a trail of pollution, deforestation, and disease. The Zambian disaster is another brutal chapter in this ongoing exploitation. Bureau Report, World is One.
Tensions are escalating in the Taiwan Strait, with Taiwan's defense ministry now releasing rare footage of Chinese military aircraft and warships conducting drills near its territory. Now, this comes after Beijing openly declared all these exercises, which were meant, and I'm quoting here, punishment for Taiwanese President Lai Ching-te's continued push for Taiwan's independence. Our next story telling you more.
Taiwan's defense ministry has released dramatic footage of China's military exercises, showing Beijing's growing military presence around the island. The visuals show Chinese warships and aircraft moving in strategic formations as tensions between the two sides reach new heights. According to Taiwan's officials, China launched joint combat readiness patrols twice in a single day, dispatching fighter jets and drones to areas encircling Taiwan. The ministry reported detecting 59 Chinese aircraft, 9 warships, and 2 surveillance balloons, making this one of the most significant military operations in recent months. The latest surge in military activity marks the highest number of Chinese aircraft reported since October 15, when a record 153 aircraft were observed, just days after Taiwan President's National Day speech. The footage captured by Taiwan's air and naval forces show Chinese warplanes maneuvering across multiple zones, north, west, southwest, and east of the island. Beijing says the exercises are a direct response to what it calls external forces supporting Taiwan's independence.
China's relevant military operation is necessary, lawful, and legitimate in order to defend national sovereignty, security, and territorial integrity. It's a firm response to external forces who are hell-bent on abetting and aiding Taiwan independence, and a warning to Taiwan separatist forces' unconscionable acts.
China has strongly criticized the US State Department's move to remove a key phrase from its Taiwan fact sheet, deleting the line, "We do not support Taiwan independence."
The US State Department removed important statements that show the US is committed to the One China policy and does not support Taiwan independence in the fact sheet of its so-called relations with Taiwan on the website, which shows the US gravely backpedaled on its position on Taiwan-related issues. This is another egregious example of the US's intention of using Taiwan to contain China and its move to abet and aid Taiwan independence.
Taiwan's president calls China a foreign hostile force, vowing to take strong measures against growing Chinese infiltration on the island. Official figures show a sharp rise in espionage cases, with Beijing targeting both retired and active Taiwanese military personnel in its intelligence gathering efforts. With China ramping up its military presence, tension in the Taiwan Strait continues to boil.
US President Donald Trump has claimed that the pardons issued by former US President Joe Biden are null and void because Biden, he claims, did not sign the pardons by hand and instead used an auto pen. Auto pen is a machine that replicates a person's signature, and Trump insists its usage makes the pardons illegitimate. Trump posted this claim on Truth Social, further claiming that besides not signing the pardons, in Trump's words, Biden knew nothing about them, unquote. Now, Trump has not only offered, he has rather not offered any legal backing for his statement, nor did he provide any evidence to support his argument. According to experts, there is nothing in US law that invalidates a presidential pardon just because it was signed with an auto pen. Trump also did not specify which pardons he was talking about. But his reference to the Unselect Committee is a term he has often used to criticize the US House committee that probed the January 6th Capitol riots. He has also previously attacked Biden for granting pardons to certain individuals, including family members, before leaving office. That's when Biden issued a wave of preemptive pardons. These pardons reportedly shielded many of those involved in the House committee's probe into the January 6th riots from potential retaliation by the incoming Trump administration. Trump has previously warned of going after his political enemies, including those who played a role in the investigation surrounding the 2020 election and the Capitol riot. Now, the debate over the use of autopen is not new. According to reports, Biden signed a bill extending U.S. federal aviation funding in May last year. Using the same device, Biden used an autopen. A U.S. Justice Department memo from 2005 written during George Bush's presidency stated that a bill can legally be signed by an autopen at the president's direction. The memo specifically said that a president does not have to physically sign a document for it to be valid. While Bush reportedly never used the device, U.S. President Barack Obama reportedly did use an autopen in 2011. And even before that, past U.S. presidents like John F. Kennedy and Harry Truman, they all relied on autopen signatures. So this practice clearly is far from new. When reporters asked Trump directly whether he truly believed the pardons should be considered void, he responded, and I'm quoting here, "It's not my decision."
Yeah. To follow up on the Biden autopen, are those executive orders, those pardons from the former president now null and void?
Well, I think so. It's not my decision. That'll be up to a court. But I would say that they're null and void because I'm sure Biden didn't have any idea that it was taking place. And somebody was using an autopen to sign off and to give pardons to, as an example, it's just one example, but the J6 Unselect Committee. They gave, think of it, they gave pardons with an autopen. I don't think Biden knew anything about it.
So the question remains, does Trump actually have a legal case against Biden? Or is this just another political statement by Trump with no real consequences? As the world awaits to receive NASA astronauts Sunita Williams and Butch Wilmore after their 9-month-long stay on the International Space Station, thanks to a technical glitch, here's a thought for anybody wondering, are they even getting paid for their overtime duties? Apparently not. As astronauts don't really have the provision for overtime salary, but the question we ask tonight is, why on earth not? Especially as hanging in there in space with resources depleting and the health conditions worsening by the hour. But clearly, NASA does not quite seem to get the memo. As per former NASA astronaut Caddy Coleman, Williams and Wilmore are not officially entitled to overtime salary or special pay, since they are federal employees of the United States. This means that their extended time in space is treated just like any regular work trip on Earth, with NASA only covering their food and living expenses on the ISS, besides the regular pay. It clearly sounds like the bare minimum. Coleman further said that the only additional compensation the astronauts receive is a small daily stipend for incidentals, which is reportedly just $4 per day. Now, if you do the math, Williams and Wilmore are likely to receive just $1,148 each in extra compensation. And that's after spending over 287 days in space. This is shocking to say the least, and comes as nothing short of an insult to the astronauts who remained committed to the rather challenging space mission till the very last minute, putting everything at stake, especially their very own health. Several reports suggested that Williams and Wilmore may face long-term physiological effects. And that's from loss of bone density to fluid shifts in the brain once they return to Earth. Not just that, both of them now even face an increased risk of getting cancer due to radiation exposure in space. And this is extremely concerning. Remember, Williams and Wilmore were supposed to stay on the ISS for just 1 week, for just 7 days. But technical problems with Boeing Starliner spacecraft delayed their return. And after all, what does NASA have to say on this? Well, the space agency so far maintained that the astronauts had not been technically stranded, but have been actively working on the ISS. And if one were to go by the same logic, should not they be duly compensated for doing due diligence to the mission and going over and above as well to ensure that they complete what they had started? You see, both the astronauts are classified under the GS-15 pay grade, which is the highest level for federal employees under the schedule system in the US. GS-15 government employees receive an annual base salary ranging somewhere between $125,000 to $162,000. And adding the figures for 9 months, they should earn a prorated salary between $93,000 to $122,000. The question is this really enough for all the hard work that they have put in? For days on end, all said and done, it's only fitting that the astronauts get the credit that they truly deserve. Well, shifting our focus to Honduras, where a small passenger plane crashed seconds after taking off from a Caribbean island near mainland Honduras, killing at least 12 people and leaving several injured. Our next report telling you more.
In yet another day and yet another deadly plane crash in Honduras. 12 people lost their lives after a small plane skidded into the sea shortly after departing from the Honduran island. It crashed approximately 1 kilometer off the island's coast. This is no ordinary crash. And the rescue operations are as challenging as it gets, which makes access extremely difficult. Efforts are underway to rescue those who survived the crash. Officers and rescue workers were seen toiling relentlessly, transporting victims from the water to an ambulance and bringing them ashore for speedy medical treatment. Honduran musician and politician Aurelio Martinez was also among those pronounced dead. Honduras, however, isn't new to crashes. Just weeks ago, a US Army Black Hawk helicopter crashed in Honduras while trying to make an emergency landing. This came on the heels of another helicopter of the same model crashing into a plane over the Potomac River in Washington, D.C. and killing 67 people in the month of January. It is no news that fatal aviation incidents have been making headlines in 2025. In Honduras, the police says that mechanical failure is a reason behind the plane crash. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Our last story on the show tonight is from South Sudan. The country's ongoing conflicts and instability have left many communities vulnerable to violence, especially women and girls. And one such issue at the forefront is sexual violence, sexual assault, which is a widespread issue, but often goes unreported. Many women in South Sudan are at a constant risk of sexual assault and rape. But today, we will tell you if technology can help survivors of sexual assault in South Sudan, which is already grappling with various crises. But before that, let's tell you about the condition South Sudan is in as of now. According to United Nations, clashes between rival forces in South Sudan have displaced 50,000 people, with the UN warning that the country is on the brink of relapse into civil war. In such a scenario, can technology be any good for the women of South Sudan? In one such incident, a 28-year-old girl tried to get help after she was gang raped by armed men while collecting firewood. But in vain, some clinics were closed and others told her to return later. To make matters worse, this young girl had no money to access a hospital. And this is just one example. There are hundreds like her in South Sudan.
I went to fetch firewood in the bush near the Juba displacement site and was raped by strangers. When I came to the health center, there was a community worker who I told my story to, but he told me that they are closing and the person who could help me isn't around, and it was on Friday. I came back on Monday but still didn't get help. I then got pregnant and became hopeless.
However, emerging technologies are now trying to transform how survivors of sexual assault in South Sudan receive care, protection, and justice that they deserve. One aid group is now trying to bridge the gap with technology to find and help survivors more quickly. We are talking about an Israeli organization in South Sudan called Israel, which has piloted a chatbot it created on WhatsApp. Now let's tell you how this works. First, it prompts questions for its staff to ask survivors of sexual assault to anonymously share their experiences. The information is then put into the phone, and the bot immediately notifies a social worker when there is a case, providing help to the person within hours.
Information that you enter into the phone reaches the caseworker immediately, and then you just have to refer the person to the center, and immediately the person will be received because the information is already given.
Well, tech experts say that technology like this can reduce human error and manual filing, but the organizations need to ensure data privacy. For the same, Israel has said that its data is encrypted and it automatically deletes from staffers' phones. However, while the potential of this technology is great, there are various challenges that need to be addressed. Number one, limited access to technology. Many survivors in rural South Sudan may not have access to smartphones or even the internet. And people with phones may not have internet access altogether. Number two, low connectivity. Well, we have to think and analyze how a technology like this can work in a region which is so poor in connectivity. Just to reiterate here, South Sudan has one of the lowest rates of mobile access and connectivity in the world. Then, there are security concerns given the volatile political situation and if the survivors will even engage with the aid workers. In the end, technology alone cannot change the future for survivors of sexual assault in South Sudan. But with the right support, it can be an important ally in the fight for justice, healing, and dignity for many in South Sudan. And well, that's all that we have for you on Gravitas tonight. Thanks very much for staying with us. You are watching WION The World this one. Do tune in.
Catch me at Token Money Magnet, only on WION.
Ready to dive into your daily dose of news?
Bringing you what's trending